feminist women love men more than non-feminist women. And I have been waiting for some research to back this up. And my mutual wrote this amazing article for Psychology Today. I'm also going to tag her video, but I want to go over her article like point by point. Because I've said this before and I've believed this, but research, everybody loves research because that actually it gives you data instead of just pontificating things. Not that stories and lived experiences aren't also important. Before we get into the nitty gritty, all the points that are so good in this piece, this right here, they found, and this is 10,000 participants across 6 studies. They found that feminist women on the whole do not hold any harsher opinions of men than non-feminist women or other men. Second, feminists actually tend to hold a positive regard for men, but unsurprisingly, that regard is mediated by how safe or threatening they perceive a man to be. As somebody who gets trolled and attacked online all the time by the men's rights activists and the inchmel, what I find to be so funny is I'm like, you do realize that I love men more than you love men. I love men more than you love yourself. You hate yourself. You hate yourself so much that you would rather live in delusion and self-hatred than truth and authenticity, which leads you to loving yourself. You can't love a lie, and you know that it's a lie, but you don't want to face that lie because of all the shame and all the other stuff, and you don't want to let go of power because that makes you feel like a big boy and all important. And so you would rather hate yourselves and hate us than be free, right? Same thing goes for white people. Those of us who will not do this work would rather live miserably in hatred than to surrender power, face our shame, because that's one of our biggest roadblocks. It's like, God, I can't admit that I have racism in me or I'm a bad person, right? Men who will not admit that they benefit from patriarchy, that they are like are terrifying and in general predators to women and exploit women and prey on women. Even the nice guys, sometimes more than nice guys do it. If they cannot face the way they have participated in this whole thing and the shame and the accountability and all those ugly things, they will rather live in self-hatred and denial than be free. Now, one of my favorite saying is truth will set you free, but first it might ruin your day or your week or your year even, right? And I think I learned the hard way as a teenager, being forced to face a lot of situations and realizing that even though these things really sucked, they actually liberated me from continuing on a path that was not good for me. And that was in regards to like, and like all kinds of like really self-destructive behaviors. I got in a lot of trouble, went to kid jail. And I say kid jail because like people in France are like, kid jail? Like what? I'm like, oh yeah, they have jail. We love prison. We love prison in the US. We even put our children in prison and they can't fathom that, honestly. That's why teenagers sell like weed here because the cops they don't do that. Anyway, so I love men so much, even though I freaking hate some of them because they literally tried to take my life too many times and created so much trauma for me. But I love men as a whole so much that I expect a lot from them. I have very high standards for men because I know they're capable of it. Once I realized that they had tricked me, the patriarchy had tricked so many women into thinking that men are dumb and incompetent and all these things when really they just don't want to do it, right? And that men can love you and cherish you and make you feel valued and all those things instead of literally just making your life harder. Once I realized that that's possible, I was like, wait a second. Why aren't all the men doing this? Because I just thought that that's how men are. And if you listen to conservative women a lot, now I grew up in the South, white woman in the South, and the way white women who will not stand up to their husband or use that whole like, I'm the neck, he's the head, like that whole thing, like manipulate the crap out of their husbands to get what they want so that they feel like they have a sense of power, but actually at any moment that man could literally destroy their lives. I noticed was that the way that women who buy into all this stuff and will not challenge men, the way they talk about men is they actually think men are below them. That men are are dumb, they're animals, they're da. And that's why when men repeat this stuff, we're like, boys will be boys, and men just like, aren't you embarrassed? Aren't you embarrassed that people think of you as like you are have no self-control, no self-discipline, like that you are so dumb. And so, like, that you're so dumb and just incompetent that you can't be trusted with anything. Like, and yet also want all the power and trust of all of us to do, oh God. It's always this, like, crazy contradiction, right? Same way white people call Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, but especially Black people, lazy. Right? Like, hello, like, who made people do everything? Who literally sipped mint juleps on the porch and refused to do anything and made all these people that they owned and tortured do all the work and call them like, this is what whoever's in power usually does to the person that they're harming, is they accuse them of the thing that they're doing. And I've known this for a while, but it hit home when I dated a man like that. I dated a narcissist, and every single thing he accused me of was what he was doing. And I was like, what? All of a sudden he's accusing me of cheating. Why is he accusing me of cheating? I'm like not even thinking about that. That's exactly when he started cheating. Like literally everything, as we know with narcissists by now, every accusation is a confession, right? And so that is like the tool of the oppressor. Right? And so all the things that men were not funny, which, I mean, I've made so many videos on that. Like cis-het white men are like the least funniest people I've ever met in my life. And I say this as a professional comedian who's been doing comedy in New York and LA since 2006. Unless they have a lot of trauma they've worked through, their humor sucks. It just sucks. It's so dumb, right? Has no depth, has no honesty, and humor is rooted in truth. How can a delusional person be funny? Other than us laughing at you, not with you. Women are bad drivers? Really? Ask an insurance company. Women are gold diggers? Oh, you're all a bunch of gold digging hobo schedules who literally exploit our labor and then accuse us, right? It's like once you see it, you're like, oh my God, right? And so of course they say I hate them. I hate them. No, baby, you hate yourself. You hate yourself. You hate me because you hate yourself. I actually, for some god-awful reason, some curse, I actually love you, men, more than you love yourself. Because I know you're capable of being better. I don't believe you're evil inherently. But you ask the more traditional women, and you hear them talk enough. They literally believe they are like biologically superior to these men, because if they didn't, that's the payoff, right? When I started really digging into this, I was like, oh, right. One of the things I got from being with these men who are awful is at least I knew I was morally superior to them. At least I knew I had the moral high ground, even though they could literally tried to unalive me. You know what I mean? Like the mental gymnastics is crazy, but we do it to survive, right? It's a trauma response. The people in my life who love me the most are the ones who will tell me the truth. Not in like being a jerk kind of way, but the ones who are like, hey, you deserve better, like of your life, of yourself. Here's what I'm seeing. Like, again, I try not to give people unsolicited advice. Don't do this to people who are like determined to not see it. Those are the people who will like actually exhaust you. It's a waste of your time. But someone that you love and who loves you and that you trust, telling them the truth is an act of love, because sometimes we can't see it until someone mirrors it back. And so in this article, in her video, she was talking about how at a dinner, some man made this super schmegzus joke about his wife, and everyone either laughed, the women laughed, and the men got uncomfortable and were like, and she was like, I don't get it. And that's how I respond to men being ridiculous. can you explain that to me? Because then they're like, crap, gotta admit, I hate women to explain this. I also learned that when I enable a man to exploit me, both of us lose. Now, again, very nuanced conversation. A lot of women have no choice because they're stuck. They're stuck financially. They're stuck because they're terrified. They don't want to die. Like, whatever. I'm just saying. When I started to, when I stopped slowly, and this takes years, and I still catch myself doing it sometimes. I'm like, whoa, Melanie, what are you doing? No, I don't do that. I try not to be so mean to myself when I catch myself falling into the default that was planted there. That's not my fault, but it was taught to me, and I'm trying to unlearn and then relearn better stuff. Anyway, what I realized was, first it started with my dad. As an adult, every time I laughed at his jokes that were demeaning, that were about my weight, that were about like something so inappropriate or whatever, every time I laughed at his jokes, I co-signed that lie that he tells himself, that he's funny, that I'm okay with it, and all the other things, right? And when I stopped laughing, and I wasn't like, I just stopped laughing. And every once in a while would gently challenge it, being like, I mean, I'm not going to come here as much if you say stuff like that. Boy, whoa. He was shocked. Because as an adult, unlike as a child, I actually can stand up to my dad. Although in my body, I felt like a child when I was around him. And the more I got practice staying true to myself instead of self-abandoning, the closer him and I got. Because for so long, like, I thought like I would get being close to him, the tax that I had to pay was losing my self-respect and abandoning myself. And I'd be so angry at myself. And every time I go home to visit him, I would end up binging and I don't know what I'm allowed to say here. My relationship with him, a lot of it was fueled by my not thinking I could, stand up to him or challenge him, and feeling so ashamed and mad at myself that I would self-harm. And so the more I started practicing standing up to my dad and talking to him eyeball to eyeball like an adult, the more that I walked with integrity, the more I respected myself, and eventually, the closer we got. Obviously, this is not going to be the case for everyone. A lot of times you actually lose family members when you shift a dynamic, right? I am not going to judge anybody who goes no contact, and I'm not going to judge anybody who, ends up like healing that stuff. It's all personal and all based on, I'm just telling you my story. But what I learned from that, I was like, well, dang, that feels good. And I started to get braver in my relationships with men. I started challenging men at work more. Eventually, I started challenging men in my dating life more because I saw that I have a bigger shot at having an authentic, even healthy-ish relationship with men, the more I stop pretending like I'm okay with things I'm not, that things are funny that aren't, that my opinion, my thoughts, my everything doesn't matter, because I got to stroke the fragile ego of the king baby. And of course, I lost some relationships as a result of that. But good, because that opened the door to other relationships that I didn't feel invisible in. And so I also learned in that little experiment, and part of this I had learned from my best friend Liz. She was one of the only people, not the only person, but she was one of the only people who was like my equal, like not like a mentor or whatever, but my equal, who would challenge me in a very loving way and tell me the truth I already knew. Like I always kind of knew something about it. I may not have really been like, sometimes I was like, wow, oh my God. But then when I think about it, I was like, I kind of knew that, right? A lot of times when people tell us the truth, it's not something we don't already know. It's something we don't want to face. And so when I realized, not only do I trust this woman more because she's being honest with me and not co-signing some BS that she doesn't agree with, right? And again, she was never like mean. She was always very thoughtful in her delivery, which is one of the qualities that my husband has, that I was like, oh my God, this is like Liz. Like there's so many things where I was like, oh wow, Liz really created a blueprint for what a healthy relationship looks like in theory and in practice. And I started to realize the people who care about me the most, will be mindful of their timing and their tone and how they deliver harsh truths. But those people love me the most. And those are people I can trust because they're looking out for me. They're looking out for me. They want what's best for me and for us. And so I started to see, being authentic to myself and not like laughing at things that aren't funny and just co-signing men's BS all the time was not only an act of self-love, it was an act of loving them. Love, maybe not the right word, but challenging them to be a better version of themselves. Whereas a lot of women who, hate feminists, even though you benefit from what we do, and are really kind of early on their deconstructing the pick-me spectrum, because I don't really know any woman raised under patriarchy that doesn't have to be a pick-me or a cool girl or something in order to survive. And then it's really hard to deconstruct all that. But what I realized is the women that would abandon themselves in order to have closer proximity to men usually hated themselves more and hated men more. I was like, wow, listening to some women who would not stand up to the men in their lives and just put up with endless BS from them. They needed to complain about these men all the time. They needed to believe that they were actually better than these men all the time. But they didn't love these men. I'm saying the women who were not in a dangerous situation, all the context are right. Okay, I understand all that. But the women who would not be honest with the men that they love were actually hated men more than I ever will. I've said this a long time, and it talks about this in that article, that the more women start to understand that it is, yes, men do this on a personal level, but it's a systemic thing. And it's patriarchy and what patriarchy does to men that I hate, right? Because then we're the ones who die more. Although they suffer, they will never suffer as much as us. Same thing for white people. We actually die inside from all of this white supremacy crap. It harms us, but nowhere near as much as we harm Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, right? Like we're not the victim here. Men's rights activists, we're the victim. No. So I respect men so much that I will actually put their own well-being and betterment for their soul above their ego. Not only because not doing so makes me hate myself, unless I'm in a situation where I'm like, oh, this guy could unalive me, so I'll smile. But assuming that I feel relatively safe, I find a way to challenge them without actually having to do much. And then they have to actually be like, huh. And they get all weird. And that discomfort is the beginning of the questioning. Now, a lot of men are determined to not learn, not care. I do not engage with those men. And I may have to do a whole nother video on going through the whole article because I can literally talk about this for 2 hours. But I want to bring a personal example into this to show you. This article that went super viral that kind of launched my career into a different level. There were so many men tweeting this, sending me messages. I still get messages. I still get thank you. The men who wanted to learn, men who wanted to grow, saw this article that I wrote that tore men apart in terms of their friendships and everything they do to not take care of themselves affects us more and the most, and it's killing us, and that we're enabling this behavior, so we need to stop. But hey, men, here's a lot of resources to help you fix your stuff. The men who read that, who are ready to hear it, they saw this as a love letter. That this 6 months of research and writing and rewriting and all the work that went into it that I got paid one time for, despite its success, I made this much money because that's what happens to writers. They saw it as a love letter. And then you get people like Bill Burr. I know lots of people love him. I don't care for him because I've seen him live and not live, and some of his stuff is so misogynistic, it's ridiculous. And yes, I love it when people call out white women, but not white men. I don't care if you are married to a Black woman. A white man who punches down and then does stuff like this, who won't even read an article written by a woman that talks about things he's been talking about because a woman's perspective may actually mean more. No. So, Bill Burr, I cannot stand that man. I felt that way after seeing him live in LA in 2016, I think. And then that tweet, I was like, yep, I'm done with that man. He does not want honest feedback about what's really wrong with men. But the men who get it, they love that article because they know it came from a place of love.